Welcome, Ogrons, Dragons, and Prison Guards, to the 107th episode of an Unearthly Podcast, featuring Frontier in Space, written by Malcolm Hulk, and streaming on the 20th of May, 2015. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt Winchell,
Yarg,
Randy Ronson McCulloch,
Always a pleasure.
Aaron Romeo Moon Burke,
Meep.
and Tim the Enchanter Sheridan.
My life at your command.
My God, is it the 20th already? God, this month has rocked by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Woohoo.
Right. So I guess we should start off with the news. And we're going to start off with a piece of news that we more or less missed last week. And that news is the fact that Doctor Who is now being broadcast in India. They're going to start with Rose, the first of the Ninth Doctor adventures, and we'll be doing one episode per day. Actually, later last week, I guess, and one episode per day, stretching up to and including the 12th Doctor's era. So they're basically going Series 1 through Series 8, one
Possibly
day at
through
a time.
Series 9 then. I mean, Series 9 won't be one day at a time, but that sounds like it'll bring them right up to the start of Series 9.
Well, let's see, basically 13 episodes per season. 14 will include a Christmas special. Plus, so that's 14 times 8. Anybody have a calculator?
Well, if we're going to calculate,
So.
if we're going to calculate, I'm just going to go straight to the actual episode count and do subtraction more than anything else.
Times 8
Oh,
plus
actually,
5. It's 117 individual episodes.
I just realized counting serials doesn't work because multi-parters count as one on Wikipedia.
Individual episodes, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's 117 episodes.
give or take.
That's more or less half a year. That could bring them right up to the Series 9 launch.
Like, Series 4 was long, Series 7 was long.
Yeah, I was including that.
I'm kind of curious if they're going to give
Actually,
Deep Breath of the
118.
5 Doctors treatment. Probably not, though.
You mean break it up into 2?
Yeah.
I'm suspecting it will be. It has been broken up into 2 already. For re-airing. I don't know. I haven't caught it on repeat on BBC America yet, because they're busy showing Tennant and Smith. So I have no idea if Capaldi gets if that episode has been broken up into two parts of an episode. I should look. But anyway, so welcome to the family of Doctor Who viewers, India.
Yes.
We're happy to have you.
Indeed.
It's a bouncing baby India.
I'm trying to check to see if that news article actually says what channel that's airing in India. It does not. So you'll have to look it up yourself, but welcome to the family. So moving on.
Hiccups.
One of us.
Ever heard of a Time Lord? Alright. Daleks loose on the tune in advance of a Doctor Who symphonic spectacular. 2 Daleks have been seen roaming around Newcastle City Centre in advance of the Doctor Who symphonic spectacular hitting the Metro Radio Arena in the city on Thursday, 20th of May during half term. So, yep, and that's going to be in Newcastle. Is thought they had escaped from the show, and we're hunting the Doctor. So yeah, Daleks are on the loose once again.
Of course.
Only this time they're in
Of course.
Newcastle.
If you know anything about Daleks?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of course, Peter Davison is going to be hosting the Symphonic Spectacular in the UK. He's very excited about that here too.
Of
All
course.
right,
Why
and
wouldn't he be?
the live screen is almost always accompanied by a big screen presentation of key moments from Doctor Who and the specially edited video sequences. So, sounds like it would be a fun time here. And it says here that they were spotted on Millennium Bridge over the River Tyne, threatening to exterminate passers-by, and later up at the Metro Radio Arena, where the show is set to appear in the half-term in a fortnight.
As long as they do not dump bodies in the river.
Yeah.
Apparently, the Daleks are not needed for whatever they're filming at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So they're free to be part of the symphonic, which I'm surprising they're doing this during filming plots, just because that's kind of a semi-spoiler in a way.
Mm. That or these are loner Daleks, either way.
That's funny.
No, these look like the official models.
How many
It could be older models still.
models do they have?
I think
Maybe they're giving the RT Daleks a timeout so that the Sentai and the Special Weapons Dalek can have an adventure together.
Yeah, right.
As for the
Special
copper
Weapons
ones,
Dalek would just
I
sit
would
there.
think they'd have at least a good 12 or more each.
They have at least a good dozen of the Russell T Davies Gold Daleks.
Goldish copper ones,
They
yeah.
produced quite a few of those over the course of, the few seasons. I think they only have one or two of each of the colors of the Sentai Daleks.
Yeah.
And of course, I think they have only one surviving model of each of the classic Daleks.
Mm-hmm.
And those are probably rebuilds as they...
Obviously,
Oh,
couldn't
they-
have lasted this long, yeah.
Oh no, never mind. They mainly just blew up miniatures. They didn't actually blow up RT Daleks.
Or if they did, it was done with CGI.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're thinking of Day, yeah, all that was done with minis.
Mm-hmm.
They actual store-bought action figures and retouched them to be more accurate.
Some people do that for a hobby.
Make a lot of money off it, too.
But they don't
Alright.
blow them up afterward.
Yeah. Oh God.
All right, so Tim.
Tim, moving on to from India to the other place
To Newcastle.
to Newcastle to Brazil. Brazil.
Of course.
Uma aventura inedita do décimo doutor interpretó no TV por David Tennant. Un periodo directo pero de se expandir hasta I'm not going to do that anymore.
I'm sorry, all I'm hearing is Rico Suave.
Eagle.
Yes. A special event is taking place at the Livaria Cultura in Sao Paulo, Brazil on the 16th of May from 4 p.m. to tie in with the publication of the 10th Doctor novel O Prisioneiro dos Daleks, aka Prisoner of the Daleks. I probably could have figured that out on my own. That's what it meant.
But just in case you couldn't.
Yeah. Originally written by Trevor Baxendale and published in the UK in 2009, the book has been translated by Camila Fernandez and published by Suma de las Letras. The event features reader chats, a special quiz, O Elo Mas Forte, the strongest link, with 4 fans battling to prove who's most knowledgeable about Doctor Who, raffles, and also the chance to pose with the TARDIS! Yay, TARDIS! This event will celebrate the arrival of Doctor Who on Brazilian television channel TV Cultura, with episodes of the show to be shown during the afternoon. So...
That last one is the main reason why we're covering this article, by the way, if you didn't guess that. That's
So-
the big thing.
That means that Doctor Who has invaded 2 countries, India and Brazil.
Yes.
Oh yeah, well, they're launching offensives on America today, this year too, with the Symphonic Who coming over here. So
Yeah.
it's really a global invasion. I don't think Britain has had this much of a global appeal on anything they've produced since the Beatles.
Okay. Yeah.
On to continuing our tour of the world, we bring news from Germany. As those who've been listening to us for a while may know, German DVD distributor Pandastorm Pictures has been doing a hell of a lot to bring as much of Doctor Who to their listening public as possible the past year or two. Probably better than the U.S. distributors, honestly. Today they're announcing that there's a delay to their release of the Five Doctors, which the announcement states is due to problems with the material. They had been planning to release it on the 26th of June this year, but it will be delayed 2 months to the 28th of August, just in time for Series 9-ish.
They finally realized the Daleks
were with the material, I say in quotes.
Apparently they were, they say we now know for sure that the German TV version has been destroyed, so I guess they thought there was remaining footage from when it was brought to German television, probably in the 80s, when that was mistaken.
I bet they were hoping to rip the audio.
Yeah.
And then place it to new video, and then discovered that there's not even existing audio.
Right.
Possibly.
Apparently, this DVD will include the TV version in English, the TV version in German, including German subtitles for the scenes edited out from the German version. The three-part TV version in German, which is heavily edited, and a special edition both in English and in German.
So in other words, they're kind of releasing like the way they released Ultraman here.
I'm tempted to start importing German DVDs just for all these editions they're getting that we're not getting in the States.
I don't know.
These weren't they the ones with the Seventh Doctor box sets?
Yeah, they're the ones that they're releasing them whole seasons, but yeah.
Depends on if they have the English version still
intact. If they're making additional material for the stuff, we'll get it when they release the special edition on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
But that
I don't know if my computer can handle the
BBC
Blu-ray yet.
moving.
I don't want to upgrade everything I own just yet. Next piece is a little less international, it looks like. I think.
Yes, we are dropping the world and going back to the 80s, actually. The British
We're no longer traveling in space, we're traveling in time.
Yes. The British composer Dominic Glynn, who's best known for his arrangement of the season 23 Doctor Who theme music, that's Trial of Time Lord, people, don't get too excited, is releasing a new mini album called the Ravelox Remixes, which presents 3 remixes based on music he originally created for Doctor Who, plus a new remix of his own Doctor Who theme from 1990. Which apparently was done for Chicago TARDIS. A convention I have wanted to go
remix
to,
is apparently not the...
but can't because it's too expensive. So, yes, the trial theme, the Ravelox remix of Dragonfire, the Mark of Cain, the L.I. Who remix, Survival, the Cheetah People, the Masters remix, and Doctor Who, the Terror version, the Chicago TARDIS remix. This is the trial theme is from the opening scene of Trial of the Time Lord remixed for 2015. I originally revisited this music for a flexi disc on the cover of Doctor Who Monthly in 1990. The Terror Vision is an arrangement of the 1990 Doctor Who Variations on a Theme EP. This remix was originally performed at last year's Chicago TARDIS.
By the way,
this
it's
mini album is available to purchase from the Amazon shop in the UK and in North America.
Yeah, I just found it. It's like about $4.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Last year, Dominic
It's
Glynn
about
released the
$1
Gallifrey
per song.
remixes, variations of his version of the Doctor Who theme used for Trial of a Time Lord. I think we reported that, and I was like, yeah, not that impressed. Dominic Glynn, like I said, his whole claim to fame is he had what was referred to as the Rub-a-Dub theme for Doctor Who, which was, like I said, used for Trial of a Time Lord and no other era. After that, it was replaced by Kef McCullough's arrangement, starting with Sylvester McCoy's starting episode. He's also wrote incidental music for The Mysterious Planet, The Ultimate Foe, Dragonfire, The Happiness Patrol, and Survivor. Big Finish Productions has used his arrangement for the Six Doctors audio plays, starting with Jubilee in 2003. That was when they decided that they had enough Doctors that each Doctor would be getting their own theme. Glynn is also a prolific composer of production music for television and film. He is a regular writer for Universal Music Publishing Group. He is featured in many episodes of The Simpsons, Red Dwarf, Erie, Indiana, and the feature films Holy Man and Kevin and Perry Go Large.
Indiana. I grew up on that show, kind of, for a few years anyway.
In 2005-2006, his composition Dangerous Beauty was used to theme the hit Dutch television thriller series Wurzy, and a number of his production music tracks have been aired as the music for Adult Swim's Bumps. He has also composed the score of the video games Forsaken and Revolt.
Forsaken sounds familiar.
He also did the B7 audio plays music for Blake 7, which were consequently aired on BBC 7, now called BBC Radio 4 Extra. So he's prolific, and he's done some interesting stuff. I'm just not overly fond of his Doctor Who stuff.
Maybe it was just a bad time, or maybe he was still new to it.
Yes,
I'd have to listen to more of his incidental music, honestly. I can't really place any of it off the top.
I have listened to his variations on a theme album, and it has some of the weirdest stuff ever recorded. He has taken the Doctor Who theme and done completely bizarre things with it. I might, after the audio, see if I can find a couple of his tracks to show you guys, but
strange
maybe
and
not.
natural things.
Pretty much. So, moving on.
Yes.
Who's next?
You.
Aaron's next.
Okay. Alright.
You haven't gotten our rhythm down yet, Aaron?
I was being facetious.
Tim, Bill. Be you, Tim, Bill.
I was being facetious. I knew I was next. I knew it the whole time.
Lather, rinse, repeat.
Of course.
Alright, so update on BBC Books competitions. We're delayed to announce that we are able to give UK readers a chance to win the latest Doctor Who publications for May and June. Courtesy of BBC Books, competition details are with each book summary below. So, yep, they're going to be, looks like City of Death, Scientific Secrets of Doctor Who, Engines of War. I believe we went through these before, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Or mentioned them before in the news.
We mentioned the releases, not these contests are new.
Mm-hmm. So, City of Death, the Doctor takes Romana on a holiday to Paris. A city which, like a fine wine, had a bouquet all of its own, especially if you visit during one of the vintage years. TARDIS takes them to 1979, a table wine year.
Oh, you know what I noticed when I was skimming, but I didn't realize it was this for all of them. Apparently, all of these contests are for UK entries only.
Yep.
I probably would have skipped it in the news if I had realized that the first time.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have any UK listeners, but hopefully they
I do believe we have an occasional UK visitor, at least we did on my channel.
All right. So anyway, the competition to be in with a chance to win a copy of the City of Death book, you have to answer the following question: what was David Fisher's original working title for his script that eventually became City of Death? Please send your answers. Please send your answers along with your name, address, and where you heard about the competition, news site, news app, other website, etc. to competition.
That would be an Unearthly Podcast.
Yeah.
Hi,
send
guys.
them to competition or compcitybook at drwhonews.net with the subject of Bye Bye Duggan. The competition is open to readers in the United Kingdom only. Closing date 31st of May 2015. Only one entry per household will be accepted. There's also competitions for the scientific secrets of Doctor Who. The question for that is, which professor presented a program delving in the science of Doctor Who on television during the 50th anniversary celebrations? Again,
God.
you can send...
I actually watched that special, too.
Okay. I have an idea. I can't remember. You could always look it up too. But yes, again, same as with the above. Your name, address, where you heard about the competition, which would be Unearthly Podcast here. To a comp science book at all one word at drwhonews.net. All right, and the subject for that would be strange matters. Again, this is only for UK readers, and this closing date will be the 5th of June, 2015. Only one entry per household. The third book up for grabs is Engines of War, written by George Mann. So, the question for if you want to win this book and you're in the UK and you're eligible. On which planet did the Doctor regenerate into the incarnation that fought in and originally ended the Time War? Send your name, address, where you heard about this competition, which would be an Unearthly Podcast, to Comp Engines Book at drwhonews.net, and then the subject would be Before the Moment. And again, this is only available to UK readers, and the closing date is June 19th. If you want to go over these details in further detail, if you want to go over this stuff a little bit more closely, make sure I haven't screwed it up for you guys. It's going to be at Doctor Who News. Make sure you read carefully all of the fine print and everything for them. So, good luck to any who are hearing this.
And I'll give you a hint on the last one. Watch Night of the Doctor.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Indeed.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So, Tim.
So, the month of May is going to be good for City of Death because it is one of two audiobooks being released by BBC Audio on May 21st. The other one being Last of the Gadarene by Mark Gatiss. City of Death is read by Lala Ward, who played Romana in the TV series. And Last of the Gadarene is being read by Richard Franklin, who played Unit's Captain Mike Yates in the Doctor Who TV series.
Oh boy.
Wasn't he the one that we were complaining kind of...
Kind of sounded like he was phoning it in. Yeah.
It's worth noting that one is also written by Mark Gatiss, who is a heavy writer in the new series.
Yeah. And not our favorite.
Which makes me think that this is going to be a pseudo-historical adventure.
And half of it's going to suck.
Actually,
which is kind of what the blurb looks like.
If you read the description, it's a solid unit adventure.
Maybe it'll suck less then.
Of course, the fact that it takes place in unit in the 70s and 80s kind of makes it the...
It kind of does now.
So nowadays, yeah.
It's historical.
Hey, there's a competition for this, too.
Yes.
I think it might be the same competitions, although there'd be a new one for the Last of the Gadreen.
Mm-hmm. Gadreen is like to be in a chance to win a copy of the audiobook Last of the Gadreen, courtesy of BBC Auto. Answer the following question: name the company that takes over Culverton's aerodrome.
So you have to listen to the audio or read the story. I don't know if it has a book version in order to win the story.
It's an audiobook, so it has to have been a book already.
Not necessarily. I know some that were only ever released audio.
I
So
get why Bill was puzzling that out, though.
Yeah.
So you have to have owned a version of this in order to answer the question to get another version of this.
Yeah. Or at
Yeah.
least listen to a friend's.
Yeah.
Make sure you have post-it notes to remind you to buy post-it notes.
Yeah.
Wait.
I mean, all the other questions they've been asking is stuff that you can find out or know had you been paying attention. That one's a little off because
Although I suppose you could get that one on TARDIS Data Core if you're a cheater, which I am.
Possibly, yeah.
Oh, and just really quick.
Wikipedia, but...
Just really quick for the audio version, in case there's a different one for the audio version. How do the critics at the art gallery describe the dematerialization of the TARDIS exhibit?
And that's for the City of Death, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Remember
that
that
was one of the
the art
Pythons, as I
critic
recall.
himself was played by John Cleese in the original airing.
Yep.
Yes.
Continuing our audio, we move from BBC Audio to Big Finish. First off, The Worlds of Big Finish has been released. This is a Big Finish crossover event featuring no characters that BBC owns the rights to, but it does include their version of Sherlock Holmes, Iris Wildthyme, which I believe is the same actress as Joe Grant. Is that right?
Possibly.
One of them is.
As well as Bernice Summerfield, who is a companion of the 7th and 8th Doctors. So if you're interested in any of that, that is out now. Continuing on, featuring Doctor Who spin-offs, we recently announced Series 9 of Jago and Lightfoot being announced. Series 10 has now been announced, which is another 4 stories in a box set. The Case of the Missing Gasogene by Simon Barnard and Paul Morris. The Year of the Bat by Jonathan Morris. The Morning After by James Goss. And The Museum of Curiosities by Justin Richards. Jago and Lightfoot are from the 4th Doctor adventure, The Talons of Wang Chiang.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody Wang Chiang tonight.
That's why I remembered that name. It's kind of interesting, how much Big Finish puts out.
And where it all connects.
Yeah.
There's a formula, a very simple formula.
Don't screw it up.
I mean, their recording studio must be huge now.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that BBC Audio kind of exists, or is.
I thought BBC Audio became Audio Go, so now I'm just confused.
I guess it makes sense because they're kind of doing their own thing, but it's just like, goddamn, why don't you just hand it all to Big Finish?
Well, you notice
then you won't have to worry about it.
They announced Torchwood for BBC Radio, and then immediately turn around and, oh yeah, by the way, Torchwood for Big Finish. It's like they're eating BBC. Continuing on in the vein of spin-offs, I mentioned Bernice Summerfield earlier. Her range has just had a large group of permanent price reductions. The first range has been dropped to the 52 single disc releases have been dropped to they state the price of £5. From my experience, when they say that, that usually means that the digital is $5 and the disc is £5. Mm-hmm. Now, they might have stabilized that since the last sale I saw, but that's usually what it means in my experience.
Either way, it's a good price.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The first volume of the new series will now be permanently priced at £20 on CD and download. And there's a few other price drops related to that. So if you're a Bernice Summerfield fan, now is the time to shop through the backlog. You can find more information on that at bigfinish.com/news. I'm not reading every single piece of it.
Oh.
Oh.
Audio Go went bankrupt.
Oh.
Oh, jeez.
In October 2013, Audio Go Limited announced it was suspending operations due to significant financial challenges and it was seeking an investment or a sale of the business. The U.S. arm, Blackstone Audio, which had been acquired in January 2013, was sold back to its founders, the Black family, at the same time. At the end of October, Audio Go Limited filed a notice of intention to appoint administrators as it was unable to find a buyer or investor. It laid off 57 people in November. And the licensing rights to 5,000 non-BBC titles would be transferred to Amazon.com as Audible. In December, Random House Audio reached an agreement with BBC Worldwide to take over the rights to 3,500 BBC titles. And basically at that point, BBC went back to producing its own audiobooks under the title BBC Audio.
So essentially what had happened was they essentially sold large chunks of what
they spun off
BBC
audiobooks.
Yeah.
They spun off BBC audiobooks into Audio Go to make it a independent firm, separate from the BBC, and it tanked. Probably because anything it could do, Big Finish could do better.
Yep.
Which is why the only Audio Go stuff that I'm familiar with was co-produced with Big Finish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then since they've tanked, BBC is releasing books again as BBC Audio.
And our last bit of Big Finish news is an actual main range release. So this one's not a spin-off. This is the Sixth Doctor with Jamie and Zoe, which is a group that we don't see very often, but has been done on occasion in Big Finish, not on screen.
The Sixth Doctor and Jamie has kind of a quasi-canonical existence because of
the two doctors.
the two
but
doctors.
They didn't travel together. They didn't travel together in the Two Doctors. They just met.
Apparently, though, the whole concept of that is it spawns the Doctor sometime after Trial of a Time Lord to see his old companions, and they wind up traveling again.
But this,
and then
this
eventually, of course,
name...
they'd get rid of them and pick up Mel, and he'd regenerate. And of course, there's also the possibility of the Big Finish other character. I cannot remember her name at the moment. Evelyn Smythe.
Well, she's not going to travel anymore, at least not in audio.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't the actress die?
Yes. Oh, speaking of which, I noticed this during an earlier news, kind of an odd time to mention it. But today is John Pertwee's death day.
Aww.
Really?
I closed the tab that I had open that said how many years ago, but
it was 1996. So it was 19 years ago.
Yeah, it's almost 20 years gone now.
Yeah. I remember this because it was the same year as the release of the Doctor Who TV movie.
The newly released main range line is by the name Last of the Cybermen. You can kind of guess the villain there. They say
the Centaurans?
It's been 10 years since the final assault on Telos, the last act of the Great Cyber War. Thanks to the glitter gun, humanity prevailed, and the half-machine Cybermen were utterly obliterated. Out on the furthest fringes of the galaxy, however, they left their mark, in the form of a giant cyberhead, hundreds of feet high. It's the Anti-Monitor's head. A monument, a memorial, a tomb. The Doctor, the Cybermen's most indefatigable adversary, sets out to investigate, but he fails to return to his TARDIS, leaving the ship. His two companions, brave Highlander Jamie McCrimmon and super-intelligent Zoe Harriet, find a stranger in the Doctor's place. Okay, yes, okay, this is another one of the, I forget what they were calling them, trilogy.
The swapped-out Doctors.
A stranger in a coat of many colors, who insists that he's the Doctor, transposed in time and space with one of his former selves. But why here? Why now? has the universe really seen the last of the Cybermen? So this is a quasi prequel to Revenge of the Cybermen. I would kind of take it.
No, this would be after Revenge, but it's
Well, it says thanks to the glitter gun, humanity prevails. So that would have
it's
been
somewhere in that era. But
Yeah.
really, are they really going with the Unicron head? Really?
Why not?
Yeah, sure.
I am Cyber Galvatron.
See, I was
upgraded.
thinking the Anti-Monitor's head floating in space in the lead up to Blackest Night, but that was probably based on that as well.
Isn't that
Upgrading is
also with
compulsory.
Guardians of the Galaxy, where one of the main city
That
hubs
wasn't a
of
robot.
the galaxy is?
That
Well,
wasn't a
it's-
robot though.
Well, yeah, isn't the city built inside the head of a
It's a
celestial
head, but it's not a
being?
robot head.
It's like
Well,
a dead creature in space.
We've managed to stall
Anyway.
on the news pretty darn long here.
Yeah.
I
Well,
wanted
so
to
did
take
that.
it.
You guys had something non-Doctor Who related. I think you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about the new movie that came out last Friday by famous director George Miller, titled Mad Max Fury Road.
What are
It
you
is the
doing
fourth
listening to podcast
in the series
nonsense?
of Mad Max movies that started in 1979 and originally starred Mel Gibson as the titular Max, but now that role has been passed to Tom Hardy. Of course, the big question is, since the last of the Mad Max movies, Beyond Thunderdome, was made 30 years ago, would this new Max be any good? And the answer is resoundingly yes. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God, yes.
Please, more yes. Oh my god,
If
why
you
aren't you watching
liked-
this right now? Go. Go.
Yes, yes. If you liked any of the previous 3 Mad Max movies or have shown any interest in them, you need to go see this movie right now.
If
Stop
you are-
listening to this podcast and go see this movie.
If you are a fan of franchises like Fallout at all, this is Fallout real life with real stunts and only like tiny segments of CG. Go see
And
it.
if you like the psychos from Borderlands, this is where they got the idea.
Yes. It was this franchise.
This is the
practically
Poco.
a day in the life of the psycho.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it really is. This is an unbelievable movie, and it's even more unbelievable considering the fact that the director did not use any CGI for the stunts or special effects in this movie, except for 1 storm and 2 explosions.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That is, compare that to Jurassic World that's coming out,
That's
where
gonna be mostly
95%
CG.
of the film is CGI.
And it's probably more biologically accurate than Jurassic World.
Yeah, there are some issues with Jurassic World people have been talking about based on what they've seen of the trailers. Here, everything you see is what happened, and it is a unbelievably good movie. This is the best George Martin has come out with in years.
George Miller, you mean?
Or, yeah, sorry, George
George
Miller.
Martin
Sorry,
is the other
it's
guy.
George starting with M, and there's an author by the name of George Martin who I'm reading at the moment. So brain goes sideways.
Did Mad Max die in the movie? If not, then it wasn't George Martin.
No, but there's plenty of other people that did die in gory, messy ways.
Yes. Otherwise, it wouldn't be Mad Max.
Yes. So anyway, George Miller. To give you a little bit of the history of this, the original Mad Max movie was shot in what would have been considered a shoestring budget of basically between 350,000 to 400,000 Australian dollars. That's what, about 250 US, $250,000 US, or less.
I don't know what the conversion was back then, so.
The entire film, by the way, took, I believe, 3 to 4 weeks to film. It took a month to make.
The gross from the first Mad Max movie was over $100 million. It held the record for the highest grossing movie of all time for a long time. because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was enough that the company then greenlighted him to make Mad Max 2, which came to America as The Road Warrior. And that one only grossed about $33 million, which kind of is weird because it is a much better movie. And it had a budget of 4.5 million Australian. And then you had Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, which was 1985, and that was $12 million Australian. It made 36.2 million Canada in the United States. So they're all technically successful, but none as successful as the original. Now, one of the reasons that we are urging you to go see this movie is that George Miller wants to make more. But
Very
at the
obviously
moment,
wants to make more.
At the moment, it hasn't even recapped its initial expenditure yet. It had George Miller filmed this with a $150 million budget, and thus far it's recouped about $118 million. That goes to show you, by the way, how much more expensive filming has become in recent years.
I would also add it doesn't help that a lot of their locations that they originally had in Australia, at the last minute before they were about ready to begin production, suddenly they had a huge rainstorm and the flora and fauna took over what was a salt flat.
Yeah.
So they had to relocate like
flat
half the movie.
It's Australia,
to
something
like
that happens.
Nambia. Yeah, some of the shots weren't even filmed in Australia. It was filmed in South Africa or Nambia. But yeah, they had fields of wildflowers where they thought they'd have desert. But yeah, this is an unbelievably good movie, and I would want to see more of this. I'm pretty sure Matt would want to see more of this.
Yes.
And I think Aaron wants to see more of this.
I grew up with them, baby.
So please do not bootleg this movie. Do not wait to see it on Netflix or premium channels. Go and spend some money to see this movie.
This is a must-see.
Let Warner Brothers know that we want more of this movie. We want more Mad Max. Anybody have anything else to add?
Can I sit back yet?
Oh yeah, there was the whole controversy over the feminism of this movie.
It was
feminists
yeah.
stick it up their backside.
One internet reviewer. It's not even worth talking about.
No, there was the MRA.
No, there was a lot of
getting on
people.
it.
There was a
The
lot
men's
of people.
rights activists were getting on it. All I can say is that I don't know. I feel that both sexes were treated equally. There's heroes
From what I
on
saw,
both
that was
sides.
the problem. Was that it was people were claiming that it was bullshit that a woman was able to have an action role and that it was unscientific in some way.
Yeah.
Well, that would be the voice of the ultra-conservative faction.
There's some
may
people
I
that believe.
may I add in?
There are some people that believe that the sky is a glass dome. That actually believe the guy who was posting those videos about the sky being just a glass dome and being all an illusion. So, yeah.
I don't know about
People
that,
believe anything.
but I do know that one of the people that did voice up their opposition of the strong women in this movie, first of all cited that there was a supposed feminist but she was there to help the quote-unquote breeders, quote-unquote wives, to understand how their role was supposed to work. And she has had experience in relaying those stories in a book format before. So she kind of knew how this was supposed to kind of work. And George Miller just needed extra help with that.
She was actually the director's wife, and she was consulted because she had worked with women who had suffered trauma in war zones.
Oh, she was his wife?
Yeah.
Didn't know about that.
I believe
Okay.
How
she was
dare
his
the director take advice from his wife? That is too feminist for the modern day, apparently.
Also, yeah, the people who were complaining were kind of pinpointed out by a lot of sensible people as just being assholes and should be ignored. There's also feminists talking about the abuse of these women. Did you see what was happening to Max in this movie, ladies? Yeah, he wasn't getting treated much better.
Yeah.
So the fact that the women are quote unquote being treated poorly, the men were being
Because one
treated
of
just
the
as
other main
bad.
characters never refers to Max as anything other than Bloodbag.
Yeah.
Yeah, Margaret actually, it was Margaret Sixel edited the film. Sorry, and it was the woman that Miller invited onto the set to lead a workshop for the actresses who played the wives. That was Eve Ensler. To give a perspective on violence
I basically just wanted to
against
rave
women
about
around
the
the
movie,
world,
not talk about
particularly
the
in war
politics.
zones.
Well,
Huh?
you can't really do it without mentioning at least a little bit of the politics, and we're here to say that a lot of the negative politics are full of it. Anyway.
Are bullshit. It's also something that could prevent someone from seeing the movie if they think it's a little too girl powery, I guess.
Yeah,
But it's
my
I
mother
didn't get that
expressed an
feeling.
urge to watch this movie, but she said, "I don't know. I don't really like violence." And I'm like trying to figure this out because Mad Max is kind of violence in its I hate to call it purest form, but
It is.
Yeah.
it is pretty much it's a
The
bit of
purest
the old
form that
ultra
you can put on
violence.
an American cinema screen.
Mad Max Fury Road is the purest form of adrenaline rush you will ever get in a cinematic format in the last 20 to 30 years.
It's a very good movie.
Dropping
It
the
is.
microphone.
And this is Mad Max in kind of its ultimate form. It's 5 minutes of opening, followed by 45 minutes of action, followed by 10 to 15 minutes of plot, followed by the remainder of the film in one ginormous action scene.
Are we doing 2 more minutes of Mad Max or 7 more minutes of Mad Max?
We're basically done. Go see this movie.
So 2 more minutes.
All right.
Don't listen to any
one
bitches
more
about
minute.
the politics. They're full of it. Go see the fucking movie.
If there's any problems with the movies, it's bunch of bullshit and butthurt nitpicking. Just go. It is more than worth your money. I'm going twice. How often have I gone to a theater twice to see a movie?
Yeah, we're
This is
considering
going to be my
to see it
first.
twice too, if we can. swing
IMAX
the
or
funds.
regular?
My first.
Yes.
IMAX?
Really?
We're debating Ultra Screen because Ultra Screen isn't that much more expensive, but IMAX is like $5 to $10 above theater costs.
Gotcha.
It deserves your money.
And I've decided that there's no movie that's worth that.
I was kind
Plus,
of
I think
disappointed when I
I
watched
think
Godzilla in
IMAX only shows in 3D these days, and
Yeah.
we're not big 3D people. There are scenes that you can tell in this movie where the 3D was supposed to be.
Here and there.
It was only near the end, though.
Mostly during the end.
All right.
And we're on to 10. So I think it's time to start the 5-minute challenge.
Yes. Does anybody want to take up the 5-minute challenge?
I have my summary ready.
You want to try to do it in 5 minutes? All right. You can start your 5 minutes now.
To avoid a collision with a starship, the Doctor and Joe Grant instead materialize the TARDIS inside the ship. Eager to establish when and where they are to resume their voyage to Earth, the two make their way to the bridge, first seeing a vessel that appears to change shape outside the viewport, then being taken prisoner by 2 human men who claim that they are Draconians, and whom Joe sees as the Drashig monster from the previous story, Carnival of Monsters. The Doctor and Joe arrive to find the ship under threat of boarding by Draconians for their cargo. We cut to a human and Draconian leaders arguing about attacks that they both claim have been perpetrated by the other. Each accuses the other of aggressively violating the Romulan neutral zone, the Draconian frontier. The Doctor realizes that the humans, Joe included, are being influenced by a hypnotic effect that makes them see what they most fear. The boarding party arrives and is actually the Ogrons from Day of the Daleks. The Ogrons stun the Doctor and crew and then steal both the ship's cargo and the TARDIS. A military ship answers a distress call, and the confused crew claim the Doctor and Joe are Draconian plants. The Doctor and Joe are taken prisoner again and are brought before the two leaders, the President of the Earth Empire and the Ambassador from Draconia, who do not believe them. The Draconians capture the Doctor, believing as the humans do that the Doctor and Joe are working for the other side, and try to force him to explain their plan before he returns to human custody. The Doctor and Joe are separated, and the President discovers that they are wanted by a colony world. She brings in the representative of that world, the Master, last seen in The Time Monster. The Master claims custody of Joe. Meanwhile, the Doctor and a political prisoner attempt to escape, but the guard, a fellow prisoner with a higher status, who is supposed to be helping them, turns on them, attempting to kill them instead. But he is saved by the Master, who has come to collect him. The Master places the Doctor and Joe in yet another prison and reveals that he is under the employ of someone who wishes to meet the Doctor and that the Ogrons are working for him. Joe distracts the Master while the Doctor escapes, though the Master catches on before the Doctor can take him by surprise, shoving Joe into an airlock to force the Doctor's cooperation. The Master exchanges Joe's safety for the return of his pistol, which the Doctor has taken from him. The Master's ship is then boarded by Draconian forces crossing the frontier. The Doctor convinces the Draconians to bring him before their Emperor. While the Doctor is trying to convince the Emperor of the Master's schemes, Ogrons attack, responding to a homing beacon in the Master's possession. At first, the Draconians believe they are humans, but the hypnosound wears off and the Emperor realizes that the Doctor is telling the truth. Fearing this information reaching the humans, the Master and the Ogrons attempt to destroy the Doctor in ship-to-ship combat. When this fails, the Ogrons attempt to capture the Doctor with a boarding party. Capturing Joe before the arrival of an Earth military vessel causes the Master to abort the capture and flee. The Master brings Joe to the homeworld of the Ogrons, even as the Doctor convinces the human authorities to mount an expedition to find it and prove the truth of the story. The Master attempts to hypnotize Joe, but since Terror of the Autons, she has learned ways to protect herself from the Master's hypnotism. The Doctor, the Prince of the Draconians, and a human military leader make their way to the Ogron world, narrowly avoiding death at the hands of a Draconian vessel who catches them crossing the neutral zone without any Corbomite. In the process, the Doctor enacts some repairs and comes into possession of an orange spacesuit. The Master tricks Joe into attempting to escape and making a distress call so the Doctor will come to him, just as he calls his mysterious benefactors. In the process, Joe steals the hypnosound device. The Doctor, the Prince, and the Earth crew land on the surface of the planet, where the Master arrived with a squad of Daleks, who exterminate all of the red shirts with them. The survivors are, surprisingly, taken to another prison after the Master convinces the Daleks to punish the Doctor by allowing him to witness the defeat of the two empires. The Doctor uses the Master's device to hypnotize an Ogron into freeing the prisoners, sending the human and Draconian back on their ship and escaping with Joe on the TARDIS. The story ends as the Doctor sends a distress signal of his own to the Time Lord.
And you did that in 4 minutes,
Just
18
barely.
seconds.
Yeah.
I think we should up the challenge. 1 minute challenge.
You know, I'm surprised that no
The
other
Doctor
science
appears, the
fiction
dog
series-
shoots, the Doctor leaves. The end.
Everybody talked at one time there.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that no other series has ever utilized the phrase "frontier in space" or something to that effect. You know, so that'd be a catchy hook for another for other
Well,
series.
other things have used the term frontier before, albeit I think Doctor Who was one of the first. What comes to mind is The Last Starfighter.
Mm-hmm.
You are recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Yes.
You know, they're actually making a new Starfighter movie now.
I've been hearing about that, yes. I know they had a musical for a while.
Anyway, while the Daleks do appear in this is actually more of a Master serial.
For the most part.
Than a Dalek serial, but even so, we needed to include it here for posterity.
Or, in other words, it's a 6-part prologue to a Dalek serial.
But it is a Master serial in itself too, and we should note it is also Roger Delgado's last outing as the Master. He would die 3 months after this aired on television in a horrible car accident. And the world was made a dimmer place at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And here you really get to see Delgado in his hale of acting.
Oh wow! So that means this is the only Delgado story in the last two TARDIS seasons. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. There was going to be more, but the actor died, and they couldn't do it. We've mentioned before that Planet of the Spiders was originally going to be the Master's finale, where he was going to die saving the Doctor's life, and the truth was going to be, and he was going to be outed as the Doctor's secret brother.
Would you let your brother die? You're my brother.
In
yes,
a
I
way,
am your brother.
I'm kind of glad they didn't get to do that. I'm not happy it cost Delgado's life.
Right.
But because it did kind of make the Master, instead of just the third Doctor's bad guy, like the monk was just the first Doctor's bad guy, but it really made him a reoccurring villain that lasted the length of the series. And, as a Time Lord, he got to, they came across the concept of regenerating him, too. Although, they really didn't do a proper regeneration of the Master. I mean, Ainley was basically hired because he looked like Delgado.
Mm-hmm.
And was basically playing a campier Delgado. It was really, I think, John Sims that was the first actor to be actually able to put his own spin on the Master. But
Everyone
really
tries
actually
to
think
pretend Eric Roberts doesn't exist.
Oh no, I don't include Roberts doing it because again he was.
He is playing the Ainley Master, but he doesn't act like it. I don't think it's a little different.
Maybe by the end he's doing his own thing, but the first half of the movie he's not really acting, as he is just going kind of zombie. Doctor must find the Doctor.
The Asian child.
Yeah, it's not really until he's captured the Doctor and almost won that you get to actually see that Roberts would have actually made a pretty good Master. But
I always dress for the occasion.
That's about the point where he starts chewing scenery.
Yes.
I really think, though, the first person to actually do a proper regeneration for the Master is Michelle Gomez.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at her Master or Mistress, she's using it, she's doing her own thing with it, but at the same time, she's incorporating bits from previous Masters.
Yeah.
Just bits. And that's how Doctor regenerations are done. You create your own persona, but you also borrow bits from previous Doctors. So I really do have to applaud Michelle Gomez for that because it's the first time we see a proper Master regeneration.
Maybe in this next episode with her, we'll see her do a snake thing.
Because other than quoting lines, because he did use, peoples of the universe, please attend carefully, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Sims didn't really have any traits associated with previous Masters.
Other than being, the manipulative, evil, psychotic, but in terms of more specific, there's not much there.
As far as I'm not talking in general. I mean, the
broad
Masters,
personality traits, but not actual close, precise things.
Whereas Gomez seems to add like a touch of Sims, psychotic for the lulz, a touch of Ainley's camp, and
touch of Delgado.
Delgado's sinisterness, and all throws it into a big sticky ball and wears it.
But no beard.
Well, that would be kind of weird. It would be kind of funny to see Michelle Gomez put on a fake beard at one point, and just going, it just didn't feel right.
Yes. Maybe she could do Ainley's Master of Disguise bit. Throw on different masks for an episode. One
But
of them has a beard, and she just throws it out.
still, it's very good to see. Delgado was a very, very, very talented actor, and without him, I don't think the Master would have been the Master as we know him.
No, without him, there wouldn't have been enough of a foothold, and he'd probably been forgotten, like they originally were planning.
And, part of it is also the fact that Delgado had probably one of the most sinister faces because of just, I don't know, it's just eyes and his presence. He basically, directors would look at him and go, there's the perfect villain right there.
Mm-hmm.
He also could do a lot of comedy, too. He was a very talented and very nice person. Talking to anybody who's ever done interviews with him or had acted with him, he's his screen personality is completely different from his real world personality. He had, when you talk to him normally, he had this twinkle and this life in his eyes that when he would lights, camera, action, and you would watch that that kindness just drain out of his eyes. It was actually kind of spooky.
Don't know what it was, but he had that trigger in him.
Yeah, he was a very talented man, and he had a lot of ability, and his death was such a shame.
It was, a matter of fact, it came as such a shock that our third Doctor here finally gave up on being the Doctor.
Well, they were good friends. They were really good friends. And they used to play pranks on each other. Apparently, when they were on, not when they were actually doing their parts, but between takes and stuff, pranks and practical jokes were the rule of the day.
Of course, as long as you're not wasting film.
Yep. They were good friends, and
unlike in the Hartnell and Troughton eras, there was actually time between takes to do that.
Oh no, they did practical jokes. They did practical jokes during the Troughton era too.
Oh, definitely during the Troughton era.
I thought they were exhausted to do that.
That was pretty much how they kept themselves going sometimes.
Got you. I got you.
Hines and
that's true. I knew. Yeah, I knew Hines and Troughton did some of that.
They were like the dynamic duo of practical jokes.
Watch me, Hines. Do like this.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Wendy Padbury who played Zoe or if it was the one that played Victoria. But one time during a lights, camera, action thing, they both kind of sidled up beside for that and basically pulled down her pants. And so she's sitting there on there giggling insanely and trying to pull her pants back up.
Well, I don't think Victoria she wore pants a couple of times.
I don't remember which one it was.
Well, then most likely.
No, I was going to say I don't think Victoria wore pants, but then again, no, she did wear pants. It's just she started out with a dress.
Yep.
But there's a higher probability.
The problem was that Padbury tended to wear cat suits too, so.
For a few episodes, anyway.
For a few things here and there.
So I really couldn't tell who it was, but they were quite the cards. Anyway, so we should get to our
happier things.
Our normal, our good, bad, etc. And again, the good, bad, and the ugly. That's how I originally started to call these when we did it. All right, so I'm going to start with Matt again because again you're in the upper left quadrant of my screen.
Just as well because it's going to be a little harder for me since I totally spaced and thought we were doing a different story today.
Yeah, I thought we were doing next week's story. He's ahead of schedule.
At least I'm prepared. Anyway, I did see this about 5 years ago, so my memory is a little rocky, but I do remember most of the basics. I guess one of the things I did like is the introduction of our new Klingon friends. Oh, wait.
The Draconians?
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Draconians never appeared again in Doctor Who, which was
they really could have used an update by now. I've seen some of the close-ups of their makeup, and even though you can kind of tell where eye holes were here and there, That's only when you examine it overly close.
I'm surprised they didn't appear in some of the multi-monster or the multi-alien stories like the Peladons or such.
Yeah.
Well, it was weird because the fact that the Draconians were never bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike
never
most of the
upfront bad
Doctor Who
guys.
aliens who are monsters out to hurt the Doctor and everything, the Draconians are an honorable, noble species with a society very reminiscent of Chinese or Japanese culture.
But they still, like, they
yes.
could have done a serial later with them as bad guys, like during the war or something like that, too. Or, obviously, they don't always go back to stories that...
No, it's kind of hard, as they
Doctor
do
talks
establish in
about,
this,
but-
that the Doctor is considered a noble by Draconian.
Yeah.
I mean, it would
'Cause
be
he went-
interesting if they had done more, where you actually, like, maybe there was some kind of equivalent of like a Sengoku Jidai or Three Kingdoms era going on Draconia, and
I'm
so
sorry,
had different effect.
I'm just thinking back to the whole whatever happened 500 years earlier, and I'm picturing the first Doctor standing next to a draconian nobleman, like, quite right, Susan. Women don't speak in this room.
The thing is, we don't know that it was the first
We
Doctor.
don't know which Doctor it
500
was. We
years
just
ago.
know that. We just know that
we don't
Percy
even know if it
remembers
was 500 years ago. It could have been last Tuesday.
Well, I'm saying for
or it might be
500
next
years
month.
ago for the Draconians. Maybe it could be any time for the Doctor.
It couldn't be next month, Matt, because he knew of it.
Oh, he already
Yeah.
Okay. It already had happened. Gotcha.
Yeah, he knew he was a noble. He used it to his advantage. But so it was in the past, but it could have been, last week for all we know. Well, technically, it would have been before Joe, as she didn't know about.
Well, it can't have been if it was third Doctor. It can't have been It can't have been before, like, the last story, because that was the
Well, it
first
could
time.
have been while Joe was taking a nap. We don't know.
True, it could have been that. Well, actually, this story does seg right into the ending of the previous, so it really would have had to be this first or second Doctor. Either way,
Yeah.
not to get bogged down on that one minor point.
Yep.
Yeah.
We honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Draconians were great. But yes, I would have loved to have seen kind of like a Warring States era where you actually had opposing factions of Draconians who were, trying to stage a coup or an uprising against the kind that the Doctors allied with. So you had good Draconians and bad Draconians, but they never did anything more with them, and it was such a shame. I'd love to see them touch on them again in New Who, and occasionally that's been bandied about. Could you
Yeah, I
imagine
would
those
love to see it.
costumes given a look for the modern age?
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. They could really use a modern touch, and it'd be excellent. Could be a nice comeback for them. Especially if they do
All right,
it right.
Tim, what did you like?
This is general.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
In general, what I really liked was the interaction between the characters, the way they played off each other. The way Joe and the Doctor bounced off each other, and then the way the Master and the Doctor bounced off each other, and then every single conversation and combination was just they fed each other perfectly. I think
It helps that these three, in addition to being friends, were old hands at working together. The entire previous season of the show, they were essentially co-stars, with Delgado appearing more than the Brigadier.
Yeah, the last season that was all like master. It was basically the Master season. So they all knew each other well enough that they knew how to bounce sets and lines off each other. So you're really seeing pros in action at this point. All right, Bill, what did you like?
I'm going to go with the costumes, not just the Draconians, but pretty much everything. I kind of liked how every area you're in feels distinct. That they in the prison they dress one way, the nobles dress one way, the Draconian, and it's maybe not like the way a top budget Blockbuster would do, but they still feel, fairly, functional for their environment, and they stand out from one another without being over the top camp.
Yeah, I like how the Earth costumes actually look fairly similar to the Draconian ones. What with the long dresses and everything. So it's kind of, I'm kind of curious if they're trying hinting at whether the cultures have started influencing each other. Maybe there was some influence on
there might have
fashion
been
or something.
there might have been a touch of that.
Mhm.
Because I think that was part of one of the stories that they were hinting at in there. So, Aaron, what did you like? Or was that yours?
I like how the serial kind of highlights how difficult diplomacy can be. It's not just, especially when fear and heightened emotions are so easily manipulated. It does take the Doctor quite a long time to get either side to see his way of how things are going on, and it takes a lot of convincing, and in the end, they do finally believe him, but it's difficult. So I kind of like it, and as someone who has to use a lot of diplomacy when I'm working with GeekCon and working on the vendor room and stuff like that, I have to cooperate with people. I have to get people to understand what's going on. That you don't want to offend the wrong person, otherwise you could wind up in trouble. So, and that's kind of how this situation is. Yeah. So.
All right. So what I really liked on this was the world building that was done for this particular serial. And I really think that the kudos for that has to go with both Malcolm Hulk, the writer, and Terrence Dix, who was the script editor. Because I think they actually collaborated together on this to, work out all the little details and stuff. And Hulk and Dix did do a lot of work together.
Mm-hmm.
But little itty bitty details that you wouldn't think a 1970s show, 1970s children's sci-fi show would actually add was there. Little things like when the TARDIS lands on the ship, what is that ship carrying?
Flour.
Mm-hmm.
And where is it heading?
Yeah. Somewhere.
It is heading to Earth.
Oh.
Which means that Earth at this era actually has to import a chunk of its food to feed its population. Another thing is...
because the Earth has been overgrown with corn.
Another thing is the news broadcast that you hear, I believe, in the president's office.
There are two news broadcasts, I think, yeah.
Talks about how these areas in the newly reformed Arctic areas are now set for habitation. And they talk about people moving into these cities and that how they will be allotted a additional...
there was the New Montreal and the new something else.
New Montreal, yeah. Was a European city. I can't remember which at the moment, but yeah, and how they would be allotted to have an additional child for a total of 2. Meaning, of course, that implies that population is highly regulated in this future society. Previously, we had mentioned dystopian science fiction being a British hallmark. And whereas we mostly complain about it at the end of its run, this is kind of the beginning of its run.
Kind of.
This is where we see it. So this is before it's overdone and, completely, totally dark.
Right.
And so this is the part of it that I really start to like. And this...
I forget, are we given a year at all?
The 2600s. I can't tell you more than that at the moment.
So still within our millennium. So while it's growing into
The
basically the
26th
first
century.
Earth Empire, essentially.
Yes. So it's basically 500 plus years in our future. But really, with some of the costuming and everything too, I could almost see where Blake 7 grew out of this.
Mm-hmm.
General Williams's outfit is essentially Raj Blake's outfit, only Blake doesn't have the collar. And the president herself is kind of a prototype for Servalan, only not as outright evil. So you could almost see this as being, having Terry Nation watch this episode of Doctor Who and go,
Ooh.
this gives me an idea. And started writing notes for Blake 7 from this.
Mm-hmm.
Especially considering the fact that the first episode of Blake 7 largely occurs the second or third episode largely occurs on a ship going to a moon prison for political refugees.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned Terry Nation watching, because I was just thinking as I was watching the serial we're talking about next week about how interesting it is that this is essentially, for what it is, it's essentially in some ways a comedy episode, not a flat out, but it's, relatively comedic compared to a lot of things being juxtaposed right before a Terry Nation script.
Yep.
And if anyone wants to argue, think about the Master sitting on the bridge reading H.G. Wells and tell me it's not comedy.
Well, the Master always had kind of weird things like that.
He always had a little tongue-in-cheek.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it came to dealing with what he perceived to be lesser beings. Wasn't he watching a children's show at one point and talking about how it was supposedly
he was watching,
picking up
I think
signals
it was a
to watch
popular
alien
British
creatures?
children's show at one point.
Yeah.
Yep.
I forget the name of it.
He's done that twice. One in New Who where he was watching Teletubbies.
Mm-hmm. From what I hear, the one in New Who was an homage to the original one.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
So again, it's the Master with tongue firmly in cheek.
Yeah, he has those moments.
I'd actually like to get a copy of that edition of H.G. Wells he was reading, and then put it on my bookshelf and make sure and see how many of my guests recognize it.
I just
You can
saw
put
a
it right
picture of him.
You can put it right next to a Doctor Who TV movie edition of The Time Machine.
I will say that it's a hardcover, so you might be able to actually find that somewhere if you're lucky.
If it's real and not a prop, never.
Yeah. If it is an actual copy of it.
I feel like the prop department was told, make us a hardcover book and put this title on it.
I don't think it was that expensive to find a book at the bookstore and go, there it is.
Okay, so let's go to things we don't like. In general, Matt.
Things I don't like. Again, I haven't seen this in a while, but I honestly don't really remember anything other than maybe a little bit of pacing here or there. Like, it could have been cut down one episode at most, as I recall.
I wouldn't say so, because...
But that was only one, and it was just a real nitpick. It wasn't really like I outright hated it or anything either.
Alright. Tim, what about you?
In general, this is sort of like a fridge logic thing for me, but I just can't get past the idea that throughout all these, so-called attacks by Draconians on humans and humans on Draconians, is that not one person took a second look at their attacker and say, it's a Draconian. Wait, that strange music is fading away. Hey, where'd the Draconian go?
I think the whole point was that they were supposed to be gone by the time
That it
it
faded.
faded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And considering that they were raiding cargo ships, it's not like they would have actually put up enough to actually have wounded an Ogron.
Yeah. Especially if they're not armed and ready for it.
That in that case, I think they missed an opportunity because I was reminded of the Abbott and Costello routine, in which Costello is in this room and then some spooky stuff happens and he runs to get Abbott, but by the time he drags Abbott into the room, everything is normal. And
Oh, that particular thing has been done many times.
Yeah.
And the Abbott and Costello did it a ton.
Hey, Abbott!
Oh!
Abbott! Abbott!
The coffin
So-
moved.
How about you, Bill? Anything you don't like in particular?
The fact that I could have cut the summary into quarters if I just said, the Doctor and Joe got thrown into a prison. They escaped. The Doctor and Joe got thrown into a prison. They escaped. The Doctor and Joe got thrown into a prison.
That's
They got
kind
let
of
out.
my
Doctor
argument
and Joe
too.
got thrown into a prison. They escaped.
They
could
at
have
the
probably
same
gotten
time,
rid
I
of one of
almost
those
played
prisons and
Yakety
saved a
Sax
lot of
while I was
time.
reading the summary.
Probably could have gotten rid of at least one or more of those prisons and saved a lot of time.
It
Just circling the
it was
gears.
kind of meant to be, though, because the way it was written was the fact that they wanted to hammer in that, you know, everybody who had the opportunity of stopping this simply refused to believe them. And the only people that knew what was going on and could make a difference couldn't because they were in prison.
Yep.
That was kind of part of the point that they were hammering home.
I was very much,
Some of it felt more like padding to me.
Yeah.
It was very much
Like
a
the
product of
entire
its time.
peace party subplot was, how
Yeah.
can we add an extra 20 minutes to the story?
Well, it was basically about the whole protests against the Vietnam War in the 70s. They were really picking up in America, and so the whole peace. Did the British fight in Vietnam, or was it
Yes.
just mostly American and French forces?
It was mostly American, but there was at least a couple of British contingents in there, like there was for Korea. Nowhere near the level that the Americans were involved, though. But at the same time,
Your allies,
there
so-
was a faction of British society of which Malcolm Hull was a part of that were convinced that America was evil. That they were on the verge of becoming fascist.
Which, by the
themselves.
way, that reminds me, I would need to go back and check. Does anybody remember if that the protester on the news ranting about how they needed to go to war? Does anybody remember if they had any particular accent?
I thought I
don't
remember
remember.
it sounding kind of American.
That's what my memory's telling me, but I don't know if I trust it.
Because
It's
I don't.
quite possible.
They didn't sound British. I remember that.
sounded-
They didn't sound British.
It sounded like
And it didn't sound
Southern
Australian.
American, but at least that's at least what my memory's telling me days later.
Yeah, actually, I think it did have a Southern American accent. Maybe a Western, Southwestern or so.
But
Yeehaw.
hang on. Excuse me, had to sneeze there. No, it was that whole concept that America was turning into this fascist, warmongering nation. This was their writing as to dealing with that. So the peace movement was an analogy for the hippie movement of the time. The anti-Viet War or Vietnam movement.
Still, I
So-
feel if you're going to have an episode largely center about a political prison where people are thrown for life and the Doctor not address it, that tells me that episode's mostly padding. because otherwise the doctor would have been right there, like, wait, before we go, we need to address this, and
Well,
it wasn't even
the
on
fact
his
is,
mind.
the fact is, though, I think he had bigger things on his mind at the time, like the fact that Earth and Draconia were about to be plunged into this giant war that was going to basically destroy both empires.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I would like to talk about this, but I have no time.
Meh.
I think he spends
Alright,
enough
so-
time arguing with the president, he would have said something.
So, Aaron, what didn't you like about this?
I actually did not like the Algren masks. I felt that they were a little too bulky and didn't quite show the facial features that they were supposed to be showing. I felt that the ones in the Day of the Daleks were a little bit the makeup there, while still wasn't all that great, but it was it allowed a little bit more of the facial features to show through. Maybe it was just minimal.
That is something I noticed when you
prosthetics.
first see an Ogron in on the first cargo ship.
I particularly remember one of the Ogrons in one of the later, maybe last or second to last episodes. The mask is a completely different color than his jaw. Like, they colored his jaw wrong.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Or maybe the makeup just didn't match all that well.
That was
with the
a
mask.
problem they also had on Day of the Doctor.
I didn't really notice it.
I'm looking at a still shot of the Ogrons coming
Day
out
of
of
the
the tunnel.
Daleks.
Yeah, in Day of that, that underpass tunnel in there.
Right. You said
And
Day of the
yeah.
Doctor, and I thought for a second you were talking
Oh,
about
sorry.
Zygons.
Yeah, Day of the Daleks. I'm sorry, where they're coming out of that underpass tunnel.
Mhm.
And one of them has a proper colored chin, but the other one is his facial paint is about 2 shades lighter than the mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was an ongoing issue.
They released.
I just
Yeah.
felt like they had more facial structure in Day of the Daleks rather than in the in this one. They seemed to bulk up. The masks seemed bulkier, and so I couldn't quite tell the facial features underneath them. So
Now, I had that same problem in Day too, because their masks just seemed kind of bland pieces of rubber on their faces. At least this, they tried to go more details on the masks.
I didn't see much detail on the masks at all.
Well, they got
be
forehead
honest.
ridges and nose ridges and stuff, a little bit extra, but I think they try to hide some of their flaws in some of the facial makeup, and it just doesn't work.
Well, what they
Yeah,
tried to also do is wear those masks, supposed to meet the face. On the sides, they added hair,
Yeah, that's what I
whereas
just
the
said.
original Ogron masks, there was nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Aaron, I don't know, can see this, but or can you open your chat window now? Because that is the picture of the Ogrons from Day of the Daleks, and you'll see what I'm talking about there with the.
It's just about as bad, yeah.
I don't know.
They look almost to be the exact same masks, only they added a little bit of hair, I think.
Yeah, and it could
I
be
feel like
just
these
that it
masks
was
were
different
flatter, but that
actors.
might have been from a year in storage.
Yeah, I think they also had to adjust. They may have looked, not so great on different actors. Maybe because of the modeling process or something.
That, and I think they had to
like
cut
Bill
out.
said it.
I think the
here
original.
is Ogrons from this serial.
Yeah, I'm comparing these two already.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're still just as bad.
Yeah, I think they actually got rid of the chins even, just to make them fit
Yeah.
better. It still doesn't really help. And
I don't know.
I thought they might have
like
made
the
more
idea
flaws.
of the Ogrons. I thought, but I think with just a little bit better, slightly better makeup, and it could just be that they didn't focus too much on them because they're really just the brutes.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to be, just rank and file. They're not supposed to be that detailed.
I liked them a little bit less when they started talking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they spoke in Day of the Daleks.
At least not very much.
Yeah, not as much as here.
But this is also the last appearance of the Ogrons, if I recall.
I was just double checking that myself. I don't know for sure.
So this is the last appearance of the Okrons, the Draconians, and Roger Delgado.
Yep.
Just ouch.
Sad.
Okay, so what I didn't like about this,
actually, they appear in Day of the Daleks, Carnival of the Monsters, Frontier in Space.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, well, we didn't do Carnival because
That's
if
not a Dalek
Daleks
episode,
were
yeah.
in there, they were if any Daleks were in there, they were stock footage.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It is worth noting that the horrible monster that Jo keeps imagining that she's seeing whenever she hears
is from Carnival, yeah. Which was
Yeah,
the serial
but
before this one.
she has more of a direct encounter with the Drashings in Carnival because basically the plot of Carnival of Monsters is this guy has this item called a mini scope, which he basically miniaturizes monsters and puts them in little habitats. And Jo winds up in one of these habitats.
And people.
Yeah, and people, because people were considered, aliens too, to this race. But anyway, Jo winds up in the habitat of these Drashings, so one basically kind of pops out and screams at her, and the Doctor has to save her. So it was a big deal for Jo. Whereas if the Daleks appeared in there, it was the Doctor looking in the miniscope and seeing one with Daleks. I don't know if he actually did, but I think there were Cybermen in there at least.
Yeah.
But so, if they were in there, they were stock footage. So that doesn't count. Anyway. What I didn't like, in general...
got better, but apparently they got worse.
Actually, I don't really have anything. I have individual nitpicks, but I've got nothing I don't like in general, so I'm going to pass. And go individual scenes we liked, starting with Matt. And Matt's going to be on the ball here, because...
Oh, boy. Actually, the one scene that has stuck with me over the long run was the scene where they turned the device on the Ogrons, and I believe it was the Doctor turned into a Dalek, and they moved the Ogron and letting them free.
Dalek, or whatever the gold Dalek was.
Yeah. Oh,
I found that scene amusing, and it stuck with me.
Okay. You know who actually did the voice of the Dalek in here? Bill?
I think there were two voices.
Nope, there was only one.
Oh.
And that voice was Michael Wisher, who would later go on to play Devros in his initial...
Interesting.
Okay. I think he did more of the rage thing with Davros then, because he just I don't know.
One thing I noticed was that the Dalek's voice modulator wasn't quite right.
Yeah. But even the tone did not sound really Dalek-ish, except when it was the Doctor as a Dalek.
Oddly enough. But yeah, it sounded like their ringtone modulator was breaking down for this because they did not sound right, or they had purchased a replacement that wasn't working. Either way, that it didn't sound they didn't sound Dalek-y. But yes, that particular scene was great. And as much as Aaron complained about the Ogron masks, that Ogron that saw that his eyes were as big as plates.
Yes, that was the one time where the makeup did work, and it was really well done.
It looked like his eyes were about to pop out of his skull.
Oh yeah, he was freaking the hell out.
That was like, okay, that's freaking awesome.
Apparently that was the one actor out of like the 3 or 4 that they must have used that actually the makeup worked, so they had him in there for that close-up.
Okay, so Tim, how about your moment of awesome?
My moment of awesome. I could choose so many scenes, but right now, the thing that pops out in my mind is the one where the master is trying to hypnotize Joe, and Joe is reciting nursery
Not having it.
rhymes, and finally the master says, "Okay, I'm done. Like, stop it."
Lasted all.
It's actually,
You
I
will
mean,
obey me.
this wasn't intended because Roger Delgado was not intending to retire, obviously, but it kind of works out perfectly in that in his first appearance he hypnotizes Joe, and in his last he can't.
She's learned how to counter hypnosis.
So it's like,
You've done it too many
Thankfully,
times, the master. She
I
has become
have-
immune.
a box. It's like, it's not real. You're the master, it's not true. Okay. Well, that didn't work either. I shall have to ponder this.
Yeah, he's actually impressed
Yeah.
in that scene. He's just like, I must congratulate you, Miss Grant.
I've done
He's
this so easily
actually
to you, you
amazed
finally grown
that she
immune.
managed to counter both of them. But then he goes on to Plan 3 and wins anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's the master for you.
Oh, yeah. Plan A didn't work. Plan B didn't work. Let's go to Plan C. We'll
Yes.
lock her in a cell and let her escape and think she's doing what she wants to do when she's really doing what I want to do. Sorry, I went a little Gordon Temple there. Anyway, Bill, what's your favorite scene?
I'm going to go with the scene where first it's the doctor and Joe, and later just Joe distracting the master while the doctor goes about his escape plan.
Doctor telling about the trial and
Yes.
the master making snide comments over the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then eventually just the doctor slipping out while Joe goes on a rant about how the doctor should be listening to the master and should be more helpful and such, and the master is just apparently buying it. I kind of thought that would have caught his eyebrow, but at that point he's just tired of listening to them.
And eventually he just turns it down. It's like, fuck, I'm gonna read my damn book. All right, Aaron, what was your favorite scene?
My favorite scene was when the master realized that the doctor wasn't in the jail cell. Let me see here. Yeah, how very relaxed of him the master comments, and then dashes over to a panel on the wall and grabs a gun. It's just like
the master was
shitty
always kind of had those moments where he read it and realized
it
what
was
was
just
going
like
on.
that was just like that. That's it. He's done playing games. He's grabbing the gun and he's going after the doctor.
All right.
You fooled me for
So-
the last time.
Moving on to what we didn't like because we're starting to hit a time crunch. Matt, scene you didn't like.
Scene I didn't like. I don't know. I don't remember any one of them in particular, but I think again we've mentioned these a little bit before, but I'm pretty sure some of the jail scenes might have gotten bland here or there. Although there are obviously a few good ones as we have mentioned, but just the constant passing of hands, I think in particular, probably really could have gone without.
I don't know. Those scenes, you never really seem to spend more than a minute in a jail cell before they come to get the doctor to talk to somebody else. Oh, I never mentioned my favorite scene, I think, was the doctor beating the mind probe.
No, not the mind probe.
All right, so, Tim, your least favorite.
My least favorite scene is the scene where the General Williams and the Draconian Prince are talking, and the Draconian Prince says, 20 years ago you started a war by destroying a Draconian ship. And the Prince says, that ship was a battlecruiser. The ship was supposed to be unarmed. Is like, it was unarmed, you fool. And I'm thinking, Okay, it took 20 years for this to come to light.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Draconians probably didn't like to interact with him directly because they blamed him. And they probably both kind of skirted the entire thing. I can see it. It's a bit of a stretch, but I can see it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's a bit of, it's a bit too stretchy for my taste.
It broke your suspension of disbelief. All right.
Yep.
That's what she said.
All right,
Boy.
Bill, your least favorite.
I'm going to go with the scene where the master is coming to get the doctor, and yet they go through the long, drawn-out, here's how we're going to escape the prison. This whole thing, with him and the political prisoner and them going through their whole scheme, and the whole time it's pointless, and then there's absolutely no payoff worth a damn.
Mm.
And it feels like you're wasting your time watching it, and afterward you're just waiting for what the hell.
All right. Aaron, your least favorite scene?
The blobby monster up on the
Damn you,
quarry.
Aaron. Yeah, the
It's
thing
just
is
like,
that the
what the hell is
the
that
actual
thing?
script, and it was mentioned in a previous thing that says the only life form is supposed to be a reptilian, so it was supposed to be a dinosaur-like creature that the Ogrons were absolutely terrified of. But they couldn't do dinosaur-like creatures, as we would see in the next season. So
Malcolm
instead, we
Hope
get
likes to write he likes to write reptiles.
So
Apparently.
instead, what we get to see is this thing that looks like a like from Legend of Zelda, if you know what that is. It basically is. It looks like somebody put a
Pancake monster.
bed sheet around a bunch of tires.
The pancake monster.
Yeah, it was not very convincing, and I couldn't not really see why the Ogrons would be scared of it. And then they show a giant picture of it later, and it is apparently worm-like the rest of the way. And it's like, really? No, not buying it. So that leaves me with my least favorite scene as a backup to that is the scene where the doctor is out of the patrol ship, and the master makes a course correction, and the doctor gets blown off the ship and then manages to catch up on it by turning his oxygen thing backwards and blowing it there. Are we really supposed to believe that oxygen coming out of a little tube is going to be as powerful or more powerful than a ship's reaction control thrusters? Seriously?
Apparently the master was burning too much oil.
He would have had to deplete that entire tank and probably wouldn't have been able to catch up with that ship. Because every second, and it took him a good 30 seconds or so of fiddling with it, that thing would have, gone apart by, kilometers. There's a reason that they keep tethers and stuff on spacesuits, because if that kind of shit happens, you're fucked. Even in orbit, you're fucked. So it is now time for us to start our final thoughts. I'll start with you, Matt.
Other than the vague nitpicks I can recall of this, I do recall this being a generally pretty good episode. Not too many complaints, and I like the little twist that we suddenly bring in the Daleks, and it's going to be a build-up for a full-on Dalek episode. Other than the constant tossing of hands, it was alright.
Alright, Tim?
I actually watched this serial a second time. This is the second time I watched it for this podcast. And it really improved with the second viewing. The first time I thought it was kind of slow and plodding. But this time I was able to notice all the good parts more. And it seemed like to be more smooth and quicker. And I thought that just the chemistry between the characters really shone through and made this brought this up, in my opinion.
All right. Bill?
in some ways, this episode is kind of envisioned as essentially a six-part prelude to a six-part Dalek story to make up for the fact that it's extremely doesn't work very well to do a 12-part entire Dalek story. In some ways, that shows, particularly with the constant prison sequences, but in some other ways, they worked really well in making a story around it. So it's a very enjoyable story, although I think it might have been a little better as a four-parter on its own.
All right. Aaron?
I really enjoyed this one. The pace was definitely faster than Day of the Dalek. The setting changed quite frequently. There was great world building, and just a more expansion on the whole mythos surrounding the Doctor and his dealings with the Daleks.
All right, is that everything?
Yep.
All right, so I went into this having never seen this serial and having only read the book, The Space War, and I expected to be fairly ho-hum on this episode. And instead, I am very, 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 I'm very, very, very fond of this episode now. I really like the world building. I like all the little details they put into all of that. And while the Ogron costumes are a bit fail, the Draconian costumes are 8 ways of wonderful. Mm-hmm. The character dynamics between the Doctor, the Master, and Joe, between the President and General Williams, between the Draconians and the Doctor and Joe, and everything all is beautifully acted and well written, in my opinion. And it is such a minutia. So there's such minute little details that it is just absolutely a joy for me to watch. It is not perfect, but it's darn close. So now we are going to go to ratings. I know Matt is going to be a little out of sorts, having not seen this in a number of years. But if you could go ahead and give it your best shot here, Matt.
Well, I can't say off of recent memory, but I can say off of long-term memory, anything that I actually really remember out of it. Again, my nitpick is that it feels like it could have been cut down to about 5 or 4 episodes. However, with that being said, I do recall it being a very strong episode, or a very strong story, and a lot of really decent things, especially with the Master and the Dragonians and the Daleks suddenly popping in as a nice little surprise at the end. So overall, I think it held itself together pretty well, even for long-term memory, so I can't really say that I would argue for any lower than maybe about a 4.
All right.
I remember it being very good.
Tim?
I'm going to give this serial 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was well above average, but there were still some minor nitpicks and flaws that that at the same time bring it slightly down.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bill.
I've been wavering between 2 scores on this one. Ultimately, I think the positives outweigh the negatives enough that I think I'm going to give this a 4.0.
All right. Aaron?
I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4.0 as well. Just because I do think it's just a very good serial. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to break with the group and give it a 4.5. Like I said, I am really impressed by this episode. And really just the costuming is the only thing I can see failing. And that was only on one particular group of masks, which were reused from a previous serial, as we've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And while it failed on a couple of them, it did work really well on 1 or 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So at least they save those guys for the main close-ups usually.
So yeah, this is almost perfection. Not quite, but close. So that will average this out to a 4.1 out of 5, which is pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
I'm still trying to piece together where this is going to be in our ratings, but we'll find out momentarily.
Up there.
Yeah, it's
Go Frontier in Space! You can do it!
I know before watching this, I wasn't going to count this into our average ratings and such for Daleks altogether, since it was mainly seeing it as a prequel to a Dalek story. But I think there's enough Dalek presence in episode 6 to really merit its placing there.
Yeah, that's why I, was for putting it into this. It's definitely a master episode, but the fact that the Daleks do show up,
it's a very good reveal at the end too. Like they don't show up till the last half of the last episode.
Yeah, I mean they're hinted at a few times, such as talking about the Ogrons, talking about a mysterious benefactor that wants to see the Doctor, but other than that, it's pretty good.
It's even more ingenious than that, because Joe says, I believe in episode 1 or episode 2, when they see the Ogrons, it's like, couldn't it be the Daleks? They've worked with the Daleks before.
I love
and
how
the Doctor immediately poo-poos it.
Yeah, he dismisses she's right almost like 100% of what she says is right, and he just completely dismisses it.
Yeah, I've never seen a pretty strong episode for Joe, actually.
That said, if you're a longtime fan of Doctor Who, as of the time it was airing, when they mention that, the Master is working for someone who has an interest in seeing the Doctor, there's really only 2 factions it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. There are 2 factions that are very, very eager to get their hands on him.
The Silence.
Not in the 70s.
Bad Aaron. No biscuit.
No Silence. Go away, Silence.
You
don't exist.
Go away.
The noisy is what we want.
All right, can I actually sort data here, guys?
I don't know, can you?
All right, here we go. With a rating of 4.1, Frontier in Space is now number 31 in our rankings, putting it between Mummy on the Orient Express and Closing Time.
Oh.
Very good company.
And 2 ranks above Castrovalva and 2 ranks above Curse of Fatal Death. Actually, it is tied with Curse of Fatal Death, Mummy on the Orient Express. They're all rating a 4.1, and Army of Ghosts Doomsday is just above that. And that's only a difference between the core reviewers and the rest of the group. So, that's where it stands.
And so...
All right. So if you enjoy listening to us, please consider subscribing on YouTube, Mixcloud, and Twitch.tv. You can also like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or support us on Patreon.com/Unearthly Podcast. And don't forget to join us next week for Planet of the Daleks, written by Terry Nation.
Basically, the continuation of this story, or at least the other half of the basically what happens next.
So, I guess that's it.
Yep, see you then.
Yes.
See you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Very well.